Welcome back, everyone, to the T.R.O.N podcast. This is your host, Rashad Woods. Today, I have one of the most positively infectious individuals I've had a chance to speak with. She's the creator of the Be Love system, and there's lots of positive energy that's coming out of this person. Ladies and gentlemen, Diane Haworth. Good to have you.
Thank you so much. I am thrilled to be here with you and with everybody that's going to be seeing this.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So you've got a lot on your plate. You're a life coach. You do clairvoyance. You grew up in Virginia, and you've really got a system to where people have got more connected with themselves and brought out that positive energy. And it was infectious when I was reading your story. And it seems to me that you've really connected with parts of yourself that a lot of people don't get a chance to reach. And you're trying to help people bring that out amongst themselves. So I just want to get a chance to kind of find out, a little background on how you got to that system and way of life.
So thank you for that. I think that I started, like most people, just trying to figure out life and what worked and what didn't work and what I kept trying and what didn't working.
Yeah.
Well, however that is, things didn't work for me in a lot of areas, and they did in some. I grew up in a very rural area in Virginia. We weren't that far from Washington, D.C., but as you can tell, there was no internet when I was a kid. There wasn't, bookstores or things like that the way they are now. So like lots of folks, trial and error. And what I discovered after many decades is that the real truth of who I am, of who you are, of who everybody that's ever going to watch this is we are sacred divine beings. And we're not, I don't know about you, but I didn't get that lesson in school. That nobody told me you're a divine being and you create your reality. I didn't get that class. I didn't get that.
It was skipped. It certainly was skipped.
Yeah. I don't even know if it was on the syllabus where I was going to school. But But we now have access to wonderful podcasts like this, to people like you who are trying to spark curiosity. And that really opens the door. Like, what if my life could be different? What could I do, think, say, know, embody that would change? And with me, it was through meditation originally, connecting to this heart space. As 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, that just would have sounded like off the rails. And now we know the spiritual, the physical, the biological benefits of meditation. And that is absolutely what opened the door for me.
So I was looking over your biography, on your website, and you have a very fascinating background. And, I don't want to obviously dwell on negative, but obviously it said you overcame some experiences that led you to this point. Without getting too personal, if you choose to be, what ultimately led you to this path of life that said, okay, I came from this section of life or this point in life, and I need to be more in tune with my spiritual, my meditation, my breath control, and positivity in the way of the world?
Yep, that's a good question. And, like lots of people, I had problems in relationships. I had health problems. I had financial problems. I had problems, lots of things that we go through in life. And what I realized was the answers that made a difference for me were not out here. I mean, there's wonderful material out there, right? Like this, but it has to resonate with you. There has to be something inside that goes, that this is here for you. And for me, once I started meditating, once I started quieting my mind, because I don't know about you, but I have one of those minds that's like always going a million miles a minute.
Oh, you and I relate very well, and that's why we connected so well when we talked.
Yeah, it's just boom, boom, boom. What meditation did for me was help me go below those fearful thoughts, those worry thoughts, those what if thoughts, or what are we going to do about that thoughts, so that I could actually hear the wisdom that was inside, the calm voice that said, here's how we proceed, instead of the little frantic. I think I got about 6 guys in my head, and they're all running around screaming and crying and all this. This voice is peaceful. It's calm. There's never it's not a frantic energy. And when I could really understand how to connect to that more consistently, my whole life changed. And that's what I teach other people, how to connect to that inner wisdom. And that's what led me actually to, I say I found the Be Love principles. Actually, the Be Love principles found me. And I'm happy to talk about that if you're interested.
Of course, that's why we're having the show. So I'm listening, and I'm fascinated. Because there's lots of negativity that can drag people down, and So I would love to, it's great to hear positivity. So I would love to hear this.
I appreciate that. And the whole story of how the Be Love principles came about are on my website. I've got them on YouTube, but I'm going to give you the little snippet version so we can talk about their power actually. For months, I had just been praying to myself, show me how to serve. Show me how to be love and light in the world. Now that seems kind of weird right there. But I had realized the difference in my life when I came from a fearful, worried place, or if I came from a more empowered place of love and compassion. And I realized that's the world I wanted to live in. That's the world I want to leave to my grandchildren, a world that's collaborative and compassionate. So I had been praying, and then I just get up and forget about it. And I was actually in a meditation in a group setting with lots of folks. And our meditation was to ask love, God, universe, source. To me, love is intelligent, creative, and expansive energy. So whatever your term is for that. The exercise was, love, what do you most want me to know today? That was it. That's it. I went inside and I asked that, and boom, it was like I got a vision. And again, you can go on my website and hear the whole story. But what resulted was 4 statements that seem pretty simple. And to tell you the truth, they are simple, but I know I wasn't living them. So the 4 statements that I then understood to be the Be Love principles: greet everyone with an open heart without an agenda.
I saw that, and that was beautiful.
See the divine essence in everyone and everything. Forgive quickly, completely, and unconditionally. That's usually the one that's a little something, something.
Yeah, I'm gritting my teeth a little bit, you know what I mean? But
and then the fourth was, and this one really blew my mind: you are the light. You never left the light of the all. So what I came to understand at the year since this occurred is that those statements on their own are powerful, but you can also use them as a process. You use them one after another as a process. Now, let's just look at this, for example. As I've gone through this and worked with myself and my clients, one of the things that I have folks do is get up, go in the mirror every morning, and look at themselves with an open heart without an agenda.
It's funny you say that, because too often we'll see that, and I just use an analogy, right? I work out, right? And it's easy to say that my body hasn't gotten to this point instead of looking at the positive of where you came from, right? It's easy to start. It's funny you say that. I literally just worked out this morning, and I'm like, this doesn't look the way that I want it to. And you dwell on the negative, and then you get discouraged. But instead of saying, I used to look like that, and I'm now here, right? And I just have a little further to go. And so that's a powerful statement unto itself, especially. I just use that for working out. And I don't want to cut you off, but obviously people have deeper things than just trying to work and, do a normal workout. But it can be even more, deeper than that.
Well, this is our vessel, right? This is the vessel that holds our spirit. And actually, this isn't in my bio, but I actually used to work on what used to be the biggest aquatic and fitness center on the East Coast. So I was around people all day long that were identified with their body. Lots of them had health issues. Lots of them were athletes. Lots of them were like you. They just want to work out and be in great shape. We want this to be healthy. And this isn't even all there is. So without the agenda, to me, and that's not a word that's not the way I would speak. That's one thing about the Be Love principles. None of this is the way I would have spoken. That's why when I received them in this meditation, which scared me, I never had anything like that happen before, by the way. I had to sit with them for a while. And the challenge of looking at yourself in the mirror without your story, without the I'm a man or a woman, I'm a this or the that, just who are you as a spirit, as an energetic spark of the divine? It's humbling. It's humbling.
Sounds like a beautiful system. And so more reasons. What else I saw about you, which is admirable, because I could never do it. You're a vegetarian, right? So does that have any, and I obviously want to get into how your clients have taken these programs, how people become a Be Love Principles ambassador. I've never been a vegetarian. I've always scoffed at the notion of it, but I'm always open to how people translate that to how their lifestyle is, because I'm not judgmental about what people eat, right? To each his own. So has that helped you, or how did you become a vegetarian?
So that's a really good question. I just yesterday was my 17-year anniversary as being a vegetarian, and literally I woke up the Sunday after Thanksgiving 17 years ago and turned to my husband and said, "I'm a vegetarian." He laughed hysterically and said, "I'll give you till Wednesday."
Yeah, right.
And that's just the way it is. That really was my body calling for that kind of energy. Now, I'm
Yeah.
not a doctor, I'm not a nutritionist, but I do understand there are certain blood types that it's easier to make that switch. And my
Right.
blood type happened to be that. I didn't know that at the time. But it
Okay.
was just something that my body was calling for. So I respected it. But I'll also tell you, if I ever feel differently, I'm not opposed to eating meat if I get that call.
Okay.
Just for me,
Right.
this is how I'm feeling healthy and happy.
And that's because it just dawned on me. I was like, I didn't know if that was part of the journey of involved with it. I didn't know if there was a certain benefit or if your principles led you to that. So
I don't know. I don't
okay.
know. Did that set me up?
Yeah.
I guess everything that's happened to us before now has set us up. 40 years ago, I had a near death experience. Did that
Yeah.
set me up? Probably, but
I'm
not
glad
in any way that I understood.
got it. And I'm so glad that you're here to talk. I'm glad
Oh,
you got through that situation in life.
thank
So,
you.
so when you talk about a person that comes up and utilizes your services
Yep.
program, what stage are they on in life? How did they reach out to you? And how did this even grow from this worked for me? Let me spread this and create this as a system that people can benefit from.
I really appreciate that question.
Yeah.
First of all, I didn't know what to do with this information. I thought I just was a weird little woman that had a weird little experience. I mean, to tell you the truth, I thought somebody had spiked my coffee at that conference. This is how different it was for me.
Right.
But
Pre-internet and everything, right? So
yeah, I didn't
yeah.
know. So as I sat with these, and I kept them to myself for a while because, it sounded crazy even to me, and I had
Right.
experienced this. Then I started asking. And when I say ask, I mean, I'm doing my best to connect to my heart and say, what am I supposed to do? And
Right.
one of the things that I was told is to live each of these principles for a week at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm going to challenge you and anyone else who's up for this. What if you spent the next week greeting everyone silently, however it works for you, with an open heart, without an agenda, without preconceived notions, without filters? What if you could treat the people at work, people at church, the guy that just cut you off on the highway? What if you could just greet everyone in the grocery store with an open heart? And what if you could greet yourself that way for 1 week? Changed everything for me. And because it did, I got goosebumps just thinking about it.
Right.
Because it changed things for me. What happens when you go to a good restaurant or you see a good movie? You want to tell everybody.
Absolutely.
You hear this great podcast. What do you want to do? You send it to all your friends.
Right.
So
Right.
that it evolved, right? It evolved. And in the second one, see the divine essence in everyone and everything. That was a stretch for me.
Yeah.
That's a stretch. But once I could remember, because that's what it is. I think this is really a remembering for us, that everybody on the planet who has ever lived, who ever will live, has that same spark. Everybody was born innocent. Everyone was born with this beautiful curiosity, with this beautiful energy. Now we
Right.
kind of get mucked up as we get older.
No question. No without question.
That changed it. What if I was going through my week and I would recognize a beautiful soul like you? Now, we've had lovely conversations and obviously, right, we're in a soul family together. But beside that, what if I could just look for that divine spark in you? How would that shift the way that I interpret? And I know I get a lot of folks that say, but this person is this, that person is this.
Absolutely.
The way I look at it, and it's just my opinion, you have your soul self and you got your personality or your ego.
Right.
And I know my personality and my ego can be a little trying at times. Go ask my husband. He'll tell you, right? But that doesn't diminish who I am as a person, who I am as a divine person. That's what I think of, in the oneness, that we're all human. We're all here doing our best to live from a loving place while we have human challenges. People get sick. People we
Correct.
love die. Crazy stuff goes on in the world. They're natural disasters. And still, my experience is I can go through that more gracefully, more lovingly when I try to connect to this instead of my fear, overwhelm, and stress.
That's beautiful, because I think that the way I've operated or tried to is I've always tried to find the positive in situation, but you always end up defaulting to natural, normal human behavior, like so many people often do. You'll say you'll have a good week, then you have a really bad week. And
Yep.
people kind of ebb and flow depending on your small children, depending on if you have a hectic work schedule and you're taking them to events, and then the stress, and then you're married, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things I was curious about, I'm like, this is great stuff, and this is a method that should be replicated because the world will be a better place. But I did have the con side to it. What do you do with people who simply are the unincorrigible, who are, a lot of us are related to them, in places with them, and it just, I don't want to say they're bad, but it's incompatible with how you operate. So how do you use your method for people who you simply can't get the positive energy out of?
So that is a great question. And I love the term incompatible. I'm going to use that one. So thank you for that. If I can recognize someone as just from a human to human perspective, I can then realize that I don't know what situations, experiences, childhood traumas have contributed to their behavior. If you have small children, you always love the child. Yeah, I saw you on Facebook. I saw those babies. They're cute. They're very cute.
Pictures show they're cute. You haven't actually said it. So
well, I have grandsons. I've got a 7-year-old and one that just turned 1. And you love them. You love every fiber of their being, and they can get on your last nerve.
Absolutely.
And you can see the behavior different from who they are as a person.
Right.
Now, one thing that people question me on, and I'm always happy to get questioned about this, by the way, is, does that mean, you're supposed to let somebody abuse you? No, you're not. Of course not. Love is not, people have a real misperception of love. It's like, oh, they're all love and light. They're jumping on unicorns over rainbows. No, I've not done that yet. Love means, to me, there are healthy boundaries. I have to love myself. There goes my microphone. Hopefully that's okay.
No, it's no big deal.
I have to love myself enough to not put myself in a situation where I'm abused.
That's very good.
And that leads to that third principle that people usually have an issue with, and that's the forgiveness piece. And I had an issue with it too, because there's lots of people that I thought, you don't deserve forgiveness.
Right.
What I realized, and I'm a student of A Course in Miracles, and it's all about forgiveness actually, is that when I use the principles in a linear fashion, if there's someone that I am incompatible with, if I can sit and go, show me how to greet this person with an open heart without an agenda. Show me their divine essence. Right. Then when I get to the forgiveness part, I find things have softened. Doesn't mean I have to validate behavior. If somebody, you need to take legal action against somebody, go do it. I mean, do what you got to do.
Right.
But I can see the difference between behavior and who they are as a spark of the divine.
I think the general consensus is that we're not talking about the extremes here, where you're like, hey, this person is violent, this person is putting myself or others that I love in harm's way. It's, don't assume that because this person is when you see them, come in with an open mind, right? Whether they're dressed a certain way, and people turn their nose up at people, right? Whether they see them at a grocery store, whether they're, working their kids in an activity, people are very judgmental. And so I think, to your point, it's very important to not do that, one of the core principles I saw when it came to you wrote a number of books, and I was very intrigued by some, you wrote books, you have an MBA. So how did you end up wanting to put this into writing, and when it came to a book, to share this with other people and some of the principles that you have?
Well, the principles I've got, as a matter of fact, we'll have a gift for your audience. I've got workbooks and way for you to work through these. Because, like I say, you didn't grow up this way. And even with forgiveness, which I call the other F word, by the way.
Yeah.
That's what my clients and I call
It's
it.
not the most F word that people tend to use.
It's forgiveness, right?
Yeah.
But I actually have used it with someone who was very violent toward me, and it helped me shift. You can use this process with individuals, with situations, in any relationship. You can use it in your financial life, in your health, right? How do I create all that? But it's really been this calling, the same way you were called to create a podcast. There's been a calling to share. My first book that I wrote is called How to Choose Love When You Just Want to Slap Somebody.
I fell out my chair when I read that title of that book.
Well, that was the story of my dad's final years and seeing other adult children in the ER and in the nursing homes and just sharing the tools that helped me journey with him to the end instead of just be fighting, and not necessarily fighting with him, but fighting with the system and fighting just. It's exhausting. It's exhausting to do that. And when I could relax into a more loving place, I found that things flowed differently. So everything that I've created is really a way to share, hey, the more that I can relax into love, the more my life works. Maybe this will work for you. And I do have to have a disclaimer. Like I said, I am not riding unicorns over rainbows. Stuff happens.
Absolutely.
Stuff happens. What I found is the more loving, consistently loving I can be, and I'm human, so it's not consistent.
Right.
I find that when those waves come in life, people are sick, there's all kinds of things. It's more like I can surf the wave instead of being dragged under.
Well, I think I heard an interesting statement once. I think I saw a quote on the internet. It said, hard times doesn't make you who you are. They reveal who you are, right?
I agree. And I also look at, and it sounds like you do the same thing. I look at languaging. So when something happens, and it does because we're human, it's going to happen. Right. I will look at it and say, is there an invitation here for me? What is my invitation in this trauma, in this situation, in this whatever it is? And sometimes it's just the invitation is just to sit with whatever it is, right? Because we are human. And that's why we're here, is to be human. But the more I can bring consciousness to chaos, the easier it is for me. And I mean, let's face it, we're human, so we want things to be as graceful and easy as it can be. Even though we can look back and see, like those last few years with my dad were horrific, and anybody who's done that knows what it's like. Absolutely. And in retrospect, the greatest gifts for my growth, for my family, you see it's still getting me, came from the love I still have for him. And he's been gone 10 years now.
Right.
And for what we went through together as a family. It wasn't just me, but as our family.
As somebody who went through that, I know exactly how you feel. I do. I know exactly how you feel. And everybody copes in different ways. And the other thing about it is, in an experience like that, it's always, I've told to other people, it's one thing to be the person attending a funeral as a guest, as a cousin, as a nephew, because you can still, it's not, they weren't yours. So you can still, hey, I can go back and watch a movie after this, after it's over, after the repast, whatever ceremony you choose to celebrate their life. But when it happens to you, you go home to that empty house. You go home with that empty feeling. Now, when everybody walked away and shook your hand and gave you all the love in the world and you're happy for it, you go home and you have to deal with the thoughts in your head. Right.
Yep.
And it's different. Unfortunately, you'll never know it until it happens, because it's a date, it's an appointment you can't cancel. You know what I mean?
Right. And you can, and it's quite the healing journey, grief is, right? And still to this day, we will incorporate, and my mom's been gone 20 years, my dad's been gone over 10. In holiday celebrations, we'll make sure there's a certain food that they loved. This is grandmommy's cranberry sauce. Here's what granddaddy loved. And it's just a way to remember the love, because that never, ever dies. It does help. And it never dies. Love doesn't die. Love is an energy. Energy, it doesn't go away. It changes form. And in case you might be able to use this with your little ones, my father-in-law passed a couple years ago when my grandson was quite small, maybe 3, 4, and he didn't understand what was going on. And what I did for him was I took out an ice cube and I said, imagine this is Papa's, what he called it. Imagine this is Papa. And
Right.
then we watched it melt.
Right.
And then I boiled it and it was in the ether. And I said, just like that, Papa's still here, but you can't see him.
Phases, right? Phases, right? He's
The
always still there.
transition.
That's deep. That's deep. But it kept it so simplistic to understand at the same time. And that's and that's a good thing, so that it doesn't overcomplicate what really happened, while still keeping it in a very positive, non-morbid way. Because I never thought of that method. That's really, that kind of hit me just thinking about it.
It's so helpful to have a visual, especially for little ones, but not necessarily for little ones. When we're in grief, when we're stressed, when we're overwhelmed, we're not thinking straight. My mom used to say, she was so mad she couldn't think straight. Biologically, that's true.
Right.
Your brain shuts down in different ways.
Absolutely.
So that's what also I love about love. We make it complicated. Love is simple. It's simple. We're the ones that kind of screw it up.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Damn.
Yeah, we don't need to. We can turn on the TV for 10 seconds and find that out. Or you could just say, listen, this is Aunt such and such, this is Uncle such and such. It don't take hard to figure that out, where, if you want to find that information out. So I had a couple other questions for you. You've certified other people in your method. There's an opportunity for people to become either A, an ambassador, or B, be actually a certified life coach through your program. So can you explain that and how that came to be?
Yep, those are actually upcoming programs at the time that we're recording this. Yep, and it's because people are looking for tools to share with others. And because I've been doing this a long time now, I've created all kinds of exercises, workbooks, things that they can share in an organized way. And that's one of the things I love about the certified coaching. Ambassadors are folks that are just like, I want to talk about this in church. I speak at a lot of churches, actually. A lot of...
Right. I can imagine that, actually, right? Just how this is transpired, because it seems like it's a way of life, not just a lesson that's learned in a given amount of time.
And it's not like a denomination, it's love. And the thing that's different about this process, I'd love to share this, is that I actually have a case study that shows some of the effectiveness, which is, again, I didn't plan on doing that. I was in a meditation and I literally heard, you're going to do a case study. And I immediately said, no, I'm not. I don't have time for that. That's not on the agenda. I'm not doing it. And I kept hearing it. And there's different ways for people to hear it. You can hear it, you can feel it, you can understand it. So I finally was like, okay, great. And I just sent a little note out to my newsletter community. And it's like, hey, does anybody want to volunteer for this 3-month study? I had no idea what I was doing. I haven't done a case study since grad school, which was a minute ago. And I was given 8 categories and created this, I call it a check-in sheet. So I had folks rate themselves in different categories like self-love, clarity, peace, all these sorts of things, pre and post 3 months. Now, what I didn't know, what nobody knew at the time, was I started this in January 2020.
My goodness.
Nobody knew Nobody knew what was coming. So we met just a few times. They did have broad guidelines. They were supposed to use the Be Love principles in any way that worked for them 5 out of 7 days. Right. And then we would meet periodically and talk about it. Now, what occurred blew my mind, because remember, 2020, starting in January, going through March.
Absolutely.
This stuff is coming up. There were people in my group that had their own physical challenges. They were people who had loved ones in nursing homes, people who were sick. I mean, it was all kinds of stuff happened. And what I found, I am going to make sure I've got my little notes for this, that over the course of 3 months, when the world didn't know anything that was going on, because we didn't, as a group, their percentage of self-love, how much they love themselves, increased by 14%. Their idea of peace, inner peace, increased by 17% during COVID.
Wow.
Their happiness as a group went up 14%. Their life situation, and you remember what happened, we were all locked down.
Cataclysmic.
It was.
It was like a bad movie, right? It was like a bad movie.
Their feelings about their life situation increased by 17%. Their feelings of divine connection increased by 29%. And this is the one that gets me every time. One of the categories was clarity. By using these principles consistently, their sense of clarity as a group went up 60%
during that
during
time, so you
COVID,
know it's
when we
effective.
didn't know anything. So I feel like this is a process that works just like everything else. It works when you work it. It helps you get more clear, more confident, feel more calm. Who the heck wouldn't want that? I
Of
mean,
course.
seriously,
Well,
who wouldn't want that?
well, the thing is about it too is there's so many things that people gravitate towards negatively because it gives them an opportunity to put their minds in a place where that's more satisfactory. It's actually harder to be positive, right? It's harder to have a clear mind, but it's better for you. People live longer.
Yeah, they do.
It's studies prove it, right? You know,
Increases your immune system, everything.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. And there's, just talking to you, right? So it's like even it's so funny, even just talking to you, and I say this very respectfully. You laugh and smile when somebody's actually laughing, smiling, right? Because then it rubs off on you that you need to be, okay, I need to match that energy kind of, right? This is the mood this conversation is going. Anything that may have, you're not going to bring that conversation to somebody who's very, very positive. The energy is just not going to match if you want to have a long lasting conversation.
I think you're right. And I also think that people forget, or at least this is my perspective, when we're talking about inner love and peace, that's joy. Look at those little babies you have.
Mm-hmm.
They're happy. I mean, unless, somebody's gotten hurt or sick, babies are happy. They're curious. They're joyful. They let you know when they're hungry, right? They're authentic. That's
Absolutely.
authentic. And that's the way we can be here. And it really am careful also about, I actually have a video on this myself on YouTube. Are you going to, when you look at a situation, are you thinking, this is horrible? Are you thinking this is an adventure?
Right.
Look at the difference in the way that feels.
It is.
Adventures can go up and down, and there's twists and turns, and there's surprises, and some are good surprises, and some are like, not so great. But that's different than this is just crap, and this is never going to get any better.
Right. And then it's easy, and it's funny you say that because it's like going in the airport, right? And so it's easy to get caught up in being in the airport. It's loud, it's chaotic, bags, but you always have to think about that picture you took on the tarmac or the souvenir you bought at the gift shop. It's very easy to get bogged down in a Griswold kind of a way.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about. I just came back from Europe a few months ago, and it happened to be that I had a little physical issue that made it a little harder. Made it a lot harder, to be honest, to get on the plane, off the plane. It was an international trip, so then you had to do the whole customs thing, all of that. And what I realized when I let myself realize is how many people were saying, "Let me help you. Do you need help with your?" That doesn't usually happen. There was such kindness. There was from strangers. It just changed everything.
Well, it's funny you say that, and obviously, I know your time is very valuable and precious. But it's funny, like even when you're driving and you're ready to just blast that horn, and then you go past that car, and then you realize, it's a senior citizen driving the car, right? And you're like, and you could have been a jerk and start hitting the horn, or you can take that extra 4 seconds and then you look in, you're like, yo, that would have been a really bad thing to be honking at a horn at a 70-plus-year-old person. Was it that deep did you really get where you were going that much faster, right? In hindsight, you did. So
usually you didn't.
So I ask you, and I ask everybody, what call to action do you have of people to from your session, from this moment that we got to talk to one another? What would you tell people, particularly for your program, to either seek out, take the next step, or evolve to be their better self, to get in, that sort of spirituality that you're an expert in?
First thing I would say always is I invite each one of you to recognize you are a divine being. You are loved. You are loving. Even if your life is not looking at like that right now, this is the invitation that you have right now in this moment to not only create a life of love, compassion, and collaboration for you, but let that go into your family, into our world. Because that is how we're going to make changes. Yeah, we're going to vote people in and out, but it's individual action. And I would invite anyone to come to beloveprinciples.org, see what free resources I have there. And then I will be giving you a link to a special gift for anyone that sees this and wants to connect
Thank
more
you so much.
deeply.
I just have to ask you a real quick question. Do you have clients? I don't know if you call them clients, you call them, I'm not sure the terminology, so I hate to use that if that wasn't the correct one. But do you have people who are outside of your geographical radius? Like, are you helping people across the country? You know, I'm sure you are. It's the internet. So, you know, that's, yeah, I'm
Yep,
glad
we're
that
on.
people
Yeah, we're on Zoom, so we can go everywhere, right? We can go
right.
everywhere. And one of the things that I have that's been really a lot of fun is I actually have a monthly membership.
I
And
saw that.
each month we explore a different topic. And one of the things that's different about my membership is the group chooses what they want to look at.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
Nice.
they actually will choose 3 months in advance. And then we have discussion. It's just they form really tight bonds. Yeah, it's been fun. And that's what I would also tell people. Follow your joy.
Right.
Follow your joy.
Yeah,
Just like
absolutely.
follow
Absolutely.
your joy.
And it's funny you mention that because it's very easy. Like, you know, I tell people all the time, you know, you have to follow what makes you happy, right? You have to follow and then you will find people that have similar interests, similar mindsets, you know, whether it's art, whether it's painting, whether it's roller skating. You know, I do martial arts. So, you know, you'll find like-minded people in that scope of what makes you happy. So,
Yeah, and that's I'm sure how we connected.
exactly.
Martial arts is very spiritual. That's a spiritual.
No question. You know, and so nothing but positive energy from you. I want to thank you so much for your time and the opportunity. You know, it's been a blessing to get a chance to get that positive energy. And you know, the world is full of better things than people think. You know.
Thank you. Much love to you. Blessings on you and on this beautiful podcast you've created.
Thank you so much. You have a wonderful day. It was a joy to have you as a guest.
Bye, everybody.